It's kind of funny, you know. We always think about light pollution as like a human problem, right?
Mm.
Messing with their sleep and blocking out the stars.
Yeah,
But it turns out even the tiny honeybees, they're not immune to it either.
it's true. Light pollution is having some pretty unexpected effects on the natural world, and honeybees, yeah, they're a perfect example of that.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be like shedding some light, no pun intended, on some fascinating new research from UC San Diego.
Okay.
And this study, it just came out this year, and it looks at how artificial light at night, or what they call ALAN,
Yeah.
is impacting honeybee sleep and behavior.
And it's so interesting because, we think of bees being tucked away in their hives,
Mm.
right? But they're actually exposed to Allen in a few key ways.
Okay, so now I'm picturing like bees under a streetlight having a little disco party. But seriously, how are bees getting exposed to artificial light?
Well, like when they swarm, it's like a natural process, right? Super essential for their survival. A bunch of bees leave the hive to go make a new colony.
Right, like a bee house hunting trip.
Exactly. And during that whole process, they could end up clustering together in places that are exposed to artificial light. Like think about trees in a park, a well-lit park,
Mm.
or even like on buildings in a city.
So even when they're just, following their natural instincts,
Yeah.
they can't really escape all the glow of our modern world.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. And then there's this thing called bee bearding, which is fascinating.
Bee bearding.
Yeah, so when temperatures get really high, especially during summer nights, honeybees, they'll cluster outside of their hive to try to regulate the temperature.
Wait, so they like form a big buzzing beard on the outside of the hive?
Exactly. And it's becoming more and more common as the climate warms, and heat waves are more frequent.
Oh, wow.
So you have all these bees who would normally be in like a dark hive at night, exposed to artificial light just because they're trying to stay cool.
That's wild. I never would have thought about bees um, being vulnerable to light pollution that way.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, if bees are spending more time outside of their hives at night, how's all that artificial light affecting their sleep? I mean, do bees even sleep?
They do. Oh, they absolutely do. And it's just as crucial for them as it is for us. Of course, it's not exactly like human sleep, though.
Yeah, I can't really imagine them snuggling up with tiny bee pillows or anything.
Right. But they do have these periods of immobility where their abdomens, they pulse differently and they become less responsive to like stimuli.
Oh.
So we can tell when a bee is in this sleep state by just observing their posture and their behavior.
So it's like a bee power nap, essential for recharging.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is that sleep plays this like critical role in their communication, specifically the waggle dance.
Oh, the waggle dance.
Yeah.
That's how they tell their hive mates, like, where to find all the good stuff, like the nectar and the pollen.
Right. And studies have shown that sleep-deprived bees have trouble performing the waggle dance accurately.
Oh, interesting.
So their directions get all fuzzy and they miscommunicate like the distance to the food source, and that can really have a ripple effect on the entire colony's ability to gather resources.
Wow. So a tired bee can actually mean a hungry hive.
Yeah.
So how did these researchers in this study go about figuring out how light pollution was affecting bee sleep specifically?
Well, they set up this like clever experiment. So they
Mhm.
collected forager bees and they put them in cages with different lighting treatments.
Okay, so like a controlled bee sleepover with different mood lighting.
Yeah, you could say that.
Ah,
So some bees had constant light, like simulating the conditions of like a brightly lit urban environment.
okay.
Others had total darkness, and then a control group had, experienced a natural day-night cycle.
So the researchers were basically like recreating the different light exposures that bees might experience in the real world. I'm curious, what did they find?
Well, they used infrared cameras to observe the bees without disturbing them, and here's where it gets really interesting. After just 79 hours, the bees that were exposed to the constant light were sleeping significantly less than the other groups.
Hmm.
Their sleep rhythms were totally out of whack.
So basically, they were experiencing the bee equivalent of like staring at a screen all night and not being able to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it makes you wonder, and the study didn't just stop there. They also saw some interesting behavioral differences in the bees that were exposed to the constant light. For example, they noticed that these bees preferred to sleep in the lower part of the cages.
Hmm. Was there something special about the bottom buck in these bee dorms?
Well, it turns out that the light intensity was much lower down there. It was like the bees were actively trying to find a dimmer spot to catch some Z's, trying to escape that constant glare.
Smart bees. So even though they were in this like controlled environment, they were
Yeah.
still trying to find a way to get some decent sleep.
Exactly. And then there was this whole issue of jostling. The researchers observed that the bees under constant light were much more likely to be bumped and disturbed by their awake nestmates.
Oh no, like when you're trying to sleep in on a Saturday and your roommate is already up making a smoothie?
Precisely. And while we can't ask the bees how they feel, the researchers speculated that this increased jostling could be connected to sleep deprivation.
Hmm.
Maybe the lack of sleep was making some of the bees more restless, leading to more disruptions for everyone.
So a cage full of grumpy, sleep-deprived bees.
Hmm.
Not exactly a recipe for a thriving colony. This is pretty fascinating, but I have to ask.
You're thinking about the bigger picture, right? The long-term implications for the bee health.
Exactly. I mean, does a little less sleep really matter that much for bees?
Well, when you think about the broader context, it's definitely cause for concern. We know that sleep deprivation can have really serious negative consequences for humans, affecting everything from our mood and our cognitive function to our physical health and immune systems. And based on this research, it seems like bees might be similarly vulnerable.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm definitely not my best self when I'm running on fumes.
Yeah.
So what are the potential consequences for these sleep-deprived bees in the real world?
Well, first, think about foraging efficiency. If bees aren't sleeping well, they might not be as sharp when it comes to remembering flower locations or navigating back to the hive.
And a confused bee is a bee that isn't bringing home the pollen.
Exactly. And it goes beyond foraging, too.
Oh,
Remember how crucial sleep is for that waggle dance? If tired bees are doing sloppy dance, that means less food for the colony, and that could potentially even impact their survival.
okay, that's already pretty bad. Are there any other potential consequences that we should be aware of?
Well, it raises this important question about their immune systems.
Okay.
We know that chronic stress, which includes sleep deprivation, can weaken our immune defenses, making us more susceptible to getting sick.
Right.
And there's reason to believe that the same could be true for bees.
Oh, wow. So light pollution could actually be making bees more vulnerable to diseases.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility that needs further investigation.
Hmm.
But even without considering diseases, that added stress of not sleeping well could be impacting their overall health and lifespan.
This is pretty alarming stuff. It sounds
Yeah.
like light pollution isn't just an annoyance. It could be a real threat to these crucial pollinators.
You've hit the nail on the head. And this study, it's really just the tip of the iceberg. There's still so much we need to learn about the long-term consequences of Al-Anon on bees.
Well, I'm learning so much from this deep dive into the world of bees and light pollution. It's amazing how even like the smallest creatures can be affected by something that we often take for granted.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that everything's interconnected. Our actions have ripple effects, and even something as seemingly harmless as turning on a light at night, it can have unforeseen consequences for the natural world.
So true. And it makes me even more like determined to do my part in protecting these amazing pollinators.
Absolutely.
So before the break, we were discussing like the potential consequences of Allen for bee health,
Yeah.
and it does sound kind of concerning.
It is.
But it seems like this study also kind of opens up some interesting avenues for future research, right?
Totally, yeah. One area that's particularly interesting is the impact of Allen on bee clock genes.
Clock genes. Now, those sound important.
Oh, they are, yeah. Clock genes are basically like the master regulators of an organism's circadian rhythms.
Okay.
So, that internal clock that tells us when to sleep, when to wake up, when to eat.
Right, like our natural 24-hour cycle.
Exactly. And bees have them too.
Yeah.
So their clock genes help regulate not just sleep-wake cycles, but also like foraging behavior, hormone production, even their social interactions.
Wow, so these clock genes are really running the whole show. I'm guessing light pollution might throw a wrench into those delicate systems.
Yeah, that's what researchers are really wanting to investigate more.
Right.
By studying how Allen affects bee clock genes, we might be able to understand the mechanisms behind light pollution's effects at a much deeper level.
Hmm.
It's like going beyond just observing the bees' behavior and actually looking at the molecular nuts and bolts of how light is messing with their biological processes.
That's fascinating. It's like we're getting a glimpse into like the inner workings of a bee's internal world.
Exactly. Yeah, and it could have really huge implications for conservation efforts.
Right.
If we could figure out which specific wavelengths of light are the most disruptive to bee clock genes,
Right.
then we could maybe develop like more targeted and effective strategies for mitigating the bad effects of Allen.
So instead of just saying, like, reduce light pollution,
Yeah.
we could be more specific, and say, like, reduce this kind of light pollution.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there any other areas where more research is needed?
Well, this particular study focused on bees in a very controlled laboratory setting,
Right.
which, was really important for being able to isolate the effects of light.
Right.
But of course, bees don't actually live in cages in the real world.
Yeah, it's a very different story out in the wild where they're dealing with so many other factors.
Exactly, yeah. So the authors of the study emphasized the need for more, field studies, particularly on bee swarms and open nesting bees.
Right, because those bees are even more exposed to artificial light than bees in like traditional hives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Studying bees in their natural environment, especially in urban areas where light pollution is the most intense, that could give us a much clearer picture of how Allen is impacting bee behavior and colony health on a larger scale.
Okay, so more research is definitely needed.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, is there anything we can do as like individuals, to help minimize the bad effects of light pollution on bees?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are a number of really practical steps that we can take.
Okay.
The study recommends developing more bee-friendly lighting solutions, for example.
Bee-friendly lighting. Tell me more.
Well, think about like the types of light bulbs that we use.
Okay.
LEDs are becoming really popular because they're so energy efficient, but some LEDs emit a lot of blue light.
Blue light, is that the same stuff that keeps us staring at our phones all night?
It's similar, yeah. And it turns out that blue light is especially disruptive to insects, including bees.
Yeah. So even if we're trying to be like, eco-conscious by using LEDs, we could be inadvertently harming bees.
It's like the classic example of unintended consequences, right?
Right.
But the good news is that, there are LEDs that give off less blue light, and we can also use like filters to block those specific wavelengths.
Okay, so being more selective about our light bulbs is a good starting point. What else can we do?
Well, it's not just about the type of light,
Oh, okay.
but also how we use it.
Got
Just being more mindful about turning off unnecessary lights at night can make a huge difference.
So simple, but so often overlooked.
Exactly, yeah. And think about those motion activated lights that are so popular now.
Right.
They're great for security and energy efficiency,
Mhm.
but they can be disruptive to insects if they're constantly triggering in areas where bees are active.
That makes sense. So I'm hearing that individual actions can really make a difference.
You can
But are there any like larger scale solutions that could help tackle this issue more broadly?
Oh, for sure, yeah. One thing you can do is advocate for dark sky initiatives in your community.
Dark sky initiatives. Those sound interesting.
Yeah, so these initiatives, they aim to reduce light pollution through things like shielding streetlights, promoting responsible outdoor lighting practices, and educating the public about the importance of dark skies.
So it's about working together as a community to make our communities more night sky friendly, which in turn helps protect bees and other nocturnal creatures.
Exactly.
I love that. Where can I learn more about dark sky initiatives and how to get involved?
The International Dark Sky Association is a fantastic resource. They
Okay.
have a ton of information on their website, including tips for individuals, businesses, and whole communities.
Perfect. We'll be sure to include a link in the show notes.
Right.
And don't underestimate the power of just spreading awareness about this issue, And
Yeah.
talking to your friends and family and neighbors about the impact of light pollution on bees and other wildlife can go a long way.
It's a great point. Sometimes just starting a conversation is the first step towards change.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, and the more people who understand the problem, the more likely we are to find solutions.
Absolutely.
I'm certainly feeling a lot more empowered after this deep dive.
Good.
I'm realizing that even something as simple as choosing a light bulb or flicking a switch can have a ripple effect on the natural world.
A powerful realization.
It is, and it's making me think a lot more carefully about my own impact. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment to kind of recap the key takeaways from our deep dive into the world of bees and light pollution.
Right.
What are the most important points that you'd like our listeners to remember?
Well, I think the first thing is to remember that even bees, these creatures that we usually associate with daytime and sunshine, they're actually vulnerable to the effects of artificial light at night.
Right, especially with those bee beards, forming on hot nights and swarms venturing out to find new homes.
Yeah.
They're spending more and more time under the glare of our lights.
And that exposure to Allen can really have a significant impact on their sleep,
Mhm.
which in turn can impact, their foraging efficiency, their ability to communicate with each other, and potentially even their immune systems.
Yeah, it's a bit like us, trying to function on too little sleep,
Hmm.
get all grumpy and disoriented and more susceptible to getting sick.
A very apt analogy.
Right. And just as we need to prioritize good sleep for our own well-being, we need to consider the sleep needs of these crucial
Yeah.
pollinator.
Ab-
We've been talking about light pollution and honeybees
Yeah.
and how it's affecting, their sleep and their behavior.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. It highlights how interconnected we are with the natural world.
It does, yeah.
Our actions, even something as simple as turning on a light,
Right.
can have like ripple effects we might not realize.
Yeah, exactly. And in the case of honeybees, those ripple effects, could have serious consequences for our ecosystems and even our food supply.
It's a sobering thought, but I'm also feeling kind of hopeful because we talked about some things that we can do to make a difference.
That's the important thing. Awareness is the first step, and once we understand the problem, then we can start finding solutions.
So let's do a quick recap for our listeners.
Okay.
What are the key takeaways from our deep dive into the world of bees and light pollution?
Well, first, remember that even bees aren't immune to the effects of artificial light at night.
Right, especially with those bee beards, they form on hot nights and swarms heading out to find new homes.
Right.
They're spending more and more time exposed to the glare of our modern world.
Yeah, and that exposure to Allen can really significantly disrupt their sleep,
Mhm.
which in turn can impact, their foraging efficiency and their ability to communicate with each other and potentially even their immune systems.
Yeah, it's a bit like us trying to function on too little sleep.
Mm-hmm.
We get all grumpy and disoriented
Mhm.
and more susceptible to getting sick.
A very apt analogy.
Right. And just as we need to prioritize good sleep for our own well-being, we need to consider the sleep needs of these crucial pollinators.
Absolutely.
So what can we do to help, I'm feeling a bit more empowered now that we've talked about some solutions.
Yeah, well, there are a number of things that individuals can do, like choosing LED bulbs that emit less blue light, or using like filters to block those wavelengths.
Right. And just being more mindful about turning off lights when we don't need them can make a big difference.
Absolutely, yeah. And on a community level, supporting dark sky initiatives is really crucial.
Yeah.
These initiatives are working to reduce light pollution through responsible lighting practices and public education.
And for those who want to learn more, we'll be sure to include a link
Hmm.
to the International Dark Sky Association in our show notes.
Mhm.
Remember, even small actions can have a big impact.
They can.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
If something as simple as light pollution can disrupt the lives of tiny bees, what other unintended consequences might our actions be having on the natural world?
That's a really powerful question to think about.
Yeah.
It really underscores that interconnectedness of all living things and reminds us to consider the broader impact of our choices, even those that seem, small or insignificant.
Beautifully said.
Mm.
So the next time you reach for that light switch, take a moment to think about the bees and the stars and all the other creatures who share our planet.
Hmm.
By being mindful of our impact, we can all play a role in creating a brighter future for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us as we explore the fascinating and sometimes worrisome world of bees and light pollution. Until next time, keep those curiosity lights burning bright.